Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are talking about at-talaq. Let us discuss the proper way of issuing the talaq and also the bid'i way. And when we say the bid'i way, we simply mean that which opposes the correct way. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah was the first one to coin the phrase bid'i talaq. Anyway, the proper way to issue the talaq is that you pronounce the divorce once. So you tell your wife you are divorced, and you do this just once, one pronouncement. When do you do this? You do this in a period of purity, meaning when your wife is not menstruating, and in this period of purity you have not had penetrative intercourse with her. So in other words, uttering the divorce twice or more in the same setting is not permissible. Likewise, uttering the divorce when she is menstruating is impermissible, because this is not the proper time or the proper iddah for the utterance of the divorce. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, فَطَلِّقُوهُنَّ لِعِدَّتِهِنْ. Divorce them in their proper time. And the proper time is as we have described it. As for the haram type of talaq, then it is basically the opposite of what we have said. So this is the talaq in which you do not observe the aforementioned conditions. Authentically in Sunan Abi Dawud, Mujahid, the student of Ibn Abbas, narrates that he sat with Ibn Abbas and a man came to Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and he said that I have divorced my wife 3 times. And Ibn Abbas remained quiet. Then after he replied and told him that Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever fears Allah, then Allah finds for him a way out. And he said, but in your case you did not fear Allah, meaning in issuing 3 divorces at the same time. And so he says, I do not find for you a way out. And you disobeyed your Rabb, so your wife is irrevocably separated from you. Meaning to say the baynunatun kubra, the bigger type of separation. And that means to say the only way they can get back again with each other is if the woman consummates marriage with another man, and then if that marriage ends up in a divorce, then they can marry again with a new contract. Now the question we ask is, supposing a man does issue 3 divorces, then do they count as 3 divorces, meaning the baynunatun kubra, or do they count as a baynunatun sughra, the lesser type of separation in which the man is able to take back the wife? Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma reports in Sahih Muslim and Abu Dawud that during the time of the Prophet and Abu Bakr and the first few years of the Khilafah of Umar, 3 divorces were counted as 1 divorce. Then after that, Umar radiallahu anhu, when he found that people are divorcing their wives 3 times in one sitting, he says that people are hastening to do something in which Allah Jalla wa Ala had granted them respite. So we are going to hold people to their word. So what he did is that he made 3 divorces an irrevocable separation. And this was a political maneuver. It was a ta'zir in effect. He is punishing the people for being silly. And authentically in the Sunan, a man called Rukana ibn Abd Yazid divorced his wife 3 times in one sitting, and he told the Prophet about it, and the Prophet said to him that you only have the right to give 1 divorce, so you may take your wife back. What about divorcing her in the hayd or the menstrual period? The menstrual period is counted in the waiting period of the divorced wife, which are 3 menstrual periods. So this is what she has to wait for. So divorcing your wife in the purity period means that the next menstrual period would be when she begins counting the waiting period of the divorced woman. But if you divorced her in the menstrual period, then that particular menstrual period in which you divorced her will not count towards her waiting period. She is going to have to wait till the next menstrual period, from which she will begin her waiting period of the divorced woman. So the husband is not allowed to prolong the waiting period for himself. He's not allowed that luxury. This is why you divorce her in the purity period, so as not to prolong the waiting period. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma made the mistake in the Sahih of divorcing his wife in the menstrual period, and the Prophet became angry and told him to take the wife back and to divorce her in the proper period of purity. But here's a crucial question. Does a divorce in the menstrual period actually count as an official divorce or not? There is a dispute here. Most scholars say it does count, and perhaps this is the weightier opinion, because in Sahih al-Bukhari, Ibn Umar, who divorced his wife in the menstrual period, says, حُسِبَتْ عَلَيَّ تَطْلِيقًا. It was counted as a divorce against me. Meaning to say, he has used up one of his 3 divorces available to him. And the argument is that he ought to know his situation better than anyone else. And likewise, the Prophet ﷺ telling him, مُرْهُ فَلْيُرَاجِعْهَا. He told Umar to tell his son, order him to take the wife back. So if you're going to take the wife back, that can only happen after the divorce. You cannot take a wife back who is not divorced. And likewise, if he divorces her in a period of purity in which he has had penetrative intercourse with her, then the divorce would be haram, but it still counts according to the majority opinion. But then the question is, with this type of haram divorce, would it be wajib for him to take her back? The weightier opinion here appears to be yes, it is wajib to take her back, just as the Prophet told Umar to order his son, Murhu falyuraji'ha, order him to take her back. So this opinion, with respect to the evidence, is weightier than the opinion which says it is recommended to take her back. Okay, now let it be known that there are 4 types of women whom this bid'i divorce does not apply. Number 1, the woman who has not consummated the marriage. So here, even if the man pronounces 3 divorces or pronounces a divorce in her menstrual cycle, it makes no difference, because such a woman does not need to observe any waiting period in the first place. So she will be irrevocably divorced. Secondly, the young girl who does not menstruate. So she does not have a menstrual cycle, so it does not make sense to say divorce her in a period of purity. All the time she's in a period of purity. And we can say the same thing about the old woman who does not menstruate, because with these 2 types of females, their waiting period is in terms of months, 3 months. It is not in terms of menstrual cycles. As for pronouncing the divorce 3 times, then this must not be done with these types of females. And secondly, the pregnant woman. Again, she does not have a menstrual cycle, because that is the normal case with pregnant women, is that they do not menstruate. So she can have the divorce pronounced to her at any stage during her pregnancy, and her waiting period will simply be until the time she delivers the child. So now let us move on to a different topic pertaining to the words used to pronounce the divorce. Now typically the scholars divide these words of divorce into 2 categories: sarih, which is clear-cut divorce, and kinaya, which are words which symbolize a divorce, but they themselves are not clear-cut divorce, but rather a divorce is intended by them. So sarih would be singular in meaning. You cannot interpret it any other way. For example, you are divorced, or any other derivatives of this. For example, I divorce you, or you have been divorced. As for the kinaya, then it could be interpreted one way or the other, and we are not sure. So we have to do one of 2 things. Either ask for his intention, or we have to look at circumstantial evidence or any indications which would enable us to interpret his words one way or the other. So for example, if he says to his wife, you are free of me, this could mean divorce, but it may mean other than divorce as well. We are not so sure. So we either have to look at his intention by asking him, or we would have to look at circumstantial evidence or surrounding indications which will enable us to interpret his words. Now an indication could be the context of the conversation. For example, the wife may ask the husband, so are you divorcing me then? Is our marriage over? And the husband replies, I have no need of you. The context of the conversation here suggests to us strongly that the husband is in fact issuing the divorce, because that's what the context is. Whereas if they were just having a quarrel over a non-divorce related matter, and the husband said, I have no need of you, or you are free of me, then in this case we are unsure whether he intends the divorce or not, so we have to ask what his intention is. However, the bottom line in all of this is simply as follows. What words are sarih and what words are kinaya depend on the time and place, so they could vary. A word which is sarih in one time and place may be a kinaya in another time and place. So it's all relative and it depends on the customs. This is the bottom line in all of this. Okay, now let us talk about the number of divorces that can be issued, because this can vary. First of all, it should be known that the husband has 3 divorces, as Allah Jalla wa Ala says, الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. Divorce is twice, so in that divorce, meaning the first 2, you either keep her with goodness or let her go. So these 2 are the raj'i divorce, where he can take her back. As for if he divorces the wife for the 3rd time, then this is the major separation, baynunatun kubra, and that simply means he cannot just take her back. As for the servant, then authentically it is the statement of Umar radiallahu anh that the servant can marry up to 2 women, not 4, and he has 2 divorces and not 3, meaning 1 raj'i divorce and the second one will be baynunatun kubra. And likewise he goes on to say that the servant woman, her waiting period is 2 menstrual cycles and not the usual 3. And this opinion of Umar radiallahu anh is also the opinion of the madhab. Now the first point to note that when it comes to the raj'i divorce, even this can lead to a baynunatun kubra, which means he cannot take her back, and in order to take her back it needs to be with a separate and new marriage contract. And these 4 scenarios are, number 1, when he divorces her and she pays him, as in for example al-khula. Then this type of divorce is actually not technically a divorce, it is a fasakh or an annulment of the marriage. The point is, he cannot take her back, even if it is the first divorce which he pronounces. Number 2, if he divorces her before consummation of the marriage, then again she has no iddah period to wait, and she is completely separated and he's not allowed to take her back. And number 3, if this divorce happens in a fasid nikah, such as one in which there is no wali, because some scholars said that such a nikah is correct, and the majority of the scholars, including the Hanbali madhab, they say that such a nikah is not correct. So there is some difference of opinion here. So the Hanabila say that this nikah contract is fasid, as opposed to a batil contract in which there is a unanimous agreement that such a contract is invalid. So the point is that if he pronounces divorce in a fasid contract, which we would force him to do, then he cannot just take her back. And fourthly, if he gives her a raj'i divorce, meaning one in which he can take her back, however the iddah period expires of 3 menstrual cycles, then after the expiration of the iddah period he is not allowed to simply take her back. Rather, there needs to be a new marriage contract. So in these 4 cases, we call it a baynunatun sughra, a smaller type of separation, where he is able to marry the wife but with a new contract. This is as opposed to the baynunatun kubra, the major type of separation, and that is when the man simply cannot take her back with a new marriage contract, because there needs to be a step which takes place before that, and that is to say that the woman needs to consummate marriage with another man, and then if and only if that contract ends up in a divorce or annulment, then and only then can the first husband take her back with a new marriage contract. So notice the difference between baynunatun sughra and baynunatun kubra. Okay, here's a question. What if the man says to his wife, you are divorced twice except once? So 2 except 1 equals to 1. So in that case she's divorced once. But what if he says, you are divorced 3 times except 1? Well, 3 except 1 equals to 2. So is she divorced twice? Well, the Hanbali madhab and many others would say yes, she is, because they take 2 or 3 divorces to be exactly that. However, on the other opinion, which is stronger in terms of the evidence, 2 divorces and 3 divorces would be counted as 1 divorce. So in such a case, where he says you're divorced 3 times except once, it will be counted as 1 divorce. Okay, now let us talk about when the husband hinges a divorce on a future event. So the first rule to note is that if he hinges the divorce on a particular event, then if that event transpires, then the divorce also takes place. However, one needs to know his intention here, because if a man hinges a divorce on a future event which is possible to happen, let's say he says to his wife, if you visit your father's house, you are divorced. This sentence can be said for 2 reasons. Firstly, because he actually wants to divorce her, and he's hinging the divorce on this event. But there is a second reason why he might say this as well. He does not really want to divorce her, but the reason why he's saying this is to scare her and to discourage her from visiting her father's house. It may be that he feels her father is having a negative impact on her and the marriage. So he merely wants to discourage her from visiting that particular house. So these are 2 possibilities. So we would need to know the intention of the husband behind these words, and we would work in accordance with the intention. If he meant the divorce, then yes, the divorce happens. However, if he just meant to discourage her, then this takes the ruling of a yameen, an oath being taken. And if she visits the house, then it would be as if he has broken the oath, and the man would have to offer the kafara. That is, the kafara of breaking the oath. However, the marriage still stands and the divorce does not take place. This is important to note. Now the madhab officially states that the divorce takes place, regardless of the intention. We go by the words. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says no, we look at the intention of the man, because these words could be carried on an oath. So it would be as if the man says to his wife, Wallahi, you will not visit your father's house. So he's taking an oath against his wife. So if the wife disobeys, he has to offer the kafara. The second point to note, that if he says, if I marry such and such a woman, then she is divorced. This is what he utters. Is she divorced? The answer is no, because a man cannot utter a divorce, even hinging it on a future event, when he's not actually married to that particular woman. Authentically, the Prophet ﷺ told us that a man cannot take a vow regarding that which he does not own, he cannot free a servant he does not own, and he cannot divorce a wife whom he is not married to. Okay, and the third point is that if he doubts whether he divorced or not, then the divorce does not count, because that is the default position, that there is no divorce until you can be certain that there is a divorce. Or even if he is afflicted with these thoughts and wasawis of shaitan telling him that maybe he divorced his wife, then pay no attention to such things. We mentioned before that the shaitan is extremely eager to create a divorce between a man and his wife. Okay, let us talk about the raj'ah, when the man takes the wife back. And the whole point about this rule is to try to save the marriage. So the raj'ah, taking the wife back, does not require a new contract or a mahar or a wali, or even that the wife should be content and give her approval. Rather, it's totally the man's right. So when can the raj'ah be made? Well, 4 conditions must be met. Firstly, the divorce must be non-separating, meaning غير بائن. So we're talking about the first or second divorce, not the third one. That produces the baynunatun kubra. And secondly, the raj'ah needs to be before the 3 menstrual cycles have passed. Thirdly, this divorce must not have been accompanied with a payment from the wife, because if that's the case, such as a khula', then this would actually be a fasq and not an official divorce. Fourthly, he must have consummated marriage with her. As for divorcing before consummating the marriage, then there is no iddah period for her. It should also be known that the Sahaba counted privacy as the same level as consummating the marriage. So these are the conditions. As for the woman in her waiting period, she is to be treated exactly as the wife is treated, except for spending the night with her. Now the Hanbali madhab says that he can take her back before she takes a bath from the 3rd menstrual cycle. So when she has taken a bathing from the 3rd menstrual cycle, then all the effects of the menses have been wiped clean, and there can be no muraja'ah. but he is allowed to take her back after the third menstrual cycle, but before she takes a bath from the menses. It is also mustahab that when pronouncing the divorce or even taking her back, that there should be witnesses. 2 witnesses from the men. We read in the Quran, وَأَشْهِدُوا ذَوَيْ عَدْلٍ مِنْكُمْ, and bring 2 witnesses to witness this from you. Likewise, authentically in Sunan Abi Dawud, Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhuma was asked about a man who divorces his wife and then he takes her back, and he did not make anyone witness this, and Imran ibn Husayn replied that he divorced her upon other than the sunnah, and he took her back upon other than the sunnah. He should bring witnesses at the time of divorce and when he takes her back, and should not repeat that mistake again. Question: how does he take her back? Well, he could take her back by pronouncing that he's taking her back. Of course, witnesses are recommended, like we said. He could touch her intimately with the intention of taking her back, or he can even have conjugal relations with her with the intention of taking her back. But note that he must have the intention of taking her back. If he has intercourse with her without the intention of taking her back, then this is fornication. And upon this we may even make a little riddle. We say a man fornicates with his wife. How can this be? And we have explained how that can be. Notice that the raj'i divorced woman still remains in the house of the husband, so she can be in privacy with him, even though she is divorced. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ رَبَّكُمْ لَا تُخْرِجُوهُنَّ مِنْ بُيُوتِهِنَّ وَلَا يَخْرُجُنَّ. Fear Allah your Rabb, do not expel them from their homes, nor should they leave their homes. Authentically, the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا النَّفَقَةُ وَالسُّكْنَى لِلْمَرْأَةِ إِذَا كَانَ لِزَوْجِهَا عَلَيْهَا رَجْعَةٌ. The daily expenditure and the housing is only for that woman whose husband has the right to take her back. So this will be within the first 2 divorces. As for the woman divorced for the 3rd time, then no, she has no right to any expenditure, nor to stay in the husband's house. As what happened to Fatima bint Qais when her husband divorced her for the 3rd time. The case was brought to the Prophet and he judged as such. Also, it is worth noting that any divorced woman should be given some sort of wealth to heal her, because a divorced woman is injured, spiritually at least. So to soothe her, at least some offering should be made. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَلِلْمُطَلَّقَاتِ مَتَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. He says this is a right against the muttaqeen, that they give their divorced wives, who is leaving them, some type of material wealth. If the divorced woman is pregnant with your child, then she deserves to be spent on until she delivers the child, because spending on her is actually spending on your child, which the man is obligated to do. Another vital point to note is that with the raj'ah, it does not require a wali, a mahar, a separate contract, and it does not require the contentment of the woman. Normally, all of these matters would be a condition for a nikah contract to be correct. But this is not a nikah contract, this is a raj'ah, a completely different thing. Okay, here's a question. If he divorces her, let's just say once, and the period finishes, and she consummates marriage with another man, and if that second marriage ends in a divorce, and this woman returns back to her first husband with a new marriage contract, of course, does the divorce meter, quote unquote, for this husband reset so that he has 3 divorces left? Or is it the case that he has 2 divorces left because he already used 1 divorce previously? And here there's a difference of opinion amongst the scholars. And what appears to be the weightier opinion is that the divorce meter is reset so that he has 3 divorces left now. Because this is the case after he has used 3 divorces and the woman needs to marry and consummate marriage with a second man before they can get back together. So if they do get back together after all of that has been done, then the divorce meter resets. So if it resets after 3 divorces, then it ought to reset after 1 or 2 divorces as well. But this is on the condition, of course, that she consummates marriage with another man. And finally, on the point of a raj'ah, let us make a point that in taking the wife back, he needs to have the proper intention. he needs to have the intention that he's going to rectify the affairs with the wife. So whatever problems they've been experiencing which led to the divorce, he needs to have the intention that he's going to iron those problems out and make islah. And along with that, we have previously stated that it is sunnah to have this witnessed. Okay, now let us talk about a different matter called al-ilah, which simply means to take an oath. And technically it means that the husband takes an oath not to have conjugal relations with the wife. Now, with many definitions, you'll find 4 months added in as part of the definition, but al-ilah itself just means to take an oath. And strictly it is just to take an oath not to have intercourse with the wife. If he does that, then we give a time limit of 4 months, after which he must have intercourse with the wife if she demands that, or divorce her, one or the other, but you cannot just leave her hanging in limbo. If a man does take an oath to not have conjugal relations with the wife, we would say it would be better for him to break that oath and actually have conjugal relations with the wife. And as for breaking the oath, you offer the kafara. This is the preferred way. He does not have to, but it's preferred. The Prophet ﷺ took an oath to keep away from his wives for 1 month, and he returned back to them after 29 days, because 1 month can be 29 days. However, if the husband takes an oath not to have intercourse with the wife for a time period which exceeds 4 months, then this is not permissible, because depriving the other person their rights is haram. So if he says, I swear by Allah that I will not have intercourse with you forever, then he's taking an oath on something which absolutely contradicts the spirit of the marriage. It would be better to just divorce the wife in this case. So what is upon the woman is to keep patient for 4 months. Then after that, it's her right. Either she can demand that he has conjugal relations with her, or if she wants, she does not need to make this demand. But if she wants to make the demand, she can take this to court, and the judge would have to give the husband an ultimatum. Either he has conjugal relations or he divorces the wife. One of the two must take place. If the husband is antagonistic and refuses to divorce, then the qadi can step in and divorce on his behalf, as if the qadi was a wakil. Okay, let us talk about the conditions for the ilah to be valid. And there are 4 of them. Number 1, the ilah, this oath, must take place from somebody who is permitted to divorce. That simply means to say that the husband must be mukallaf, which is baligh and aqil, and mukhtar, from his own choice, not being forced. So can the ilah be made by somebody who is talking in his sleep? The answer is no. A divorce cannot be uttered in such a way, and even if it is uttered, we do not take it into consideration, so neither can the ilah. Similarly, an insane person is not able to make the ilah nor pronounce a divorce. Okay, what about a drunk person? Some scholars would say, yes, what the drunk person says, if he makes the ilah, it is counted against him because he drank the alcohol through his own choice. So now he has to live with his choices. But the correct opinion is that if a drunk person pronounces a divorce or takes an oath, it is not to be counted against him. He cannot be punished in such a way. And the reason is because the punishment of the one who drinks alcoholic beverages is 40 lashes at the minimum. So we cannot punish him twice for the same sin. Condition number 2, that this husband must not be such that he is unable to have intercourse. So for example, if he's castrated. Now if a person is castrated, then what difference does it make if he takes an oath not to have intercourse or not? He cannot have intercourse in the first place. And thirdly, that this oath be taken in the name of Allah or one of His attributes, because any oath can only be in effect when taken by the name of Allah or one of His attributes. Otherwise, we do not pay it any mind. And the 4th condition, according to the madhab, is that he takes an oath not to have intercourse with her for a period of more than 4 months. Like we said before, strictly speaking, the ilah is simply the oath. That's it. Where the qadi comes into play is after 4 months if the wife demands it. Otherwise, the 4 months is technically not really part of the definition of ilah. Just one final point. Note that if the husband simply refuses to have intercourse with his wife just in order to annoy her or to bring her some kind of psychological harm, then this is not ilah, because he has not taken an oath. In a case like this, we would not give him a period of 4 months. Rather, we would order him right here and now to accede to his wife's demands for intimacy, because the man is ordered to live honorably with his wife, showing good and praiseworthy conduct. And it is of course not praiseworthy conduct when you intend to annoy or harm your own spouse. Okay, now let us move to a different topic of al-dhihar. It comes from the word dhahar, which means back. And technically it means when a man tells his wife, "You are like the back of my mother." And this is what the people of Jahiliyyah used to do. So a broader definition, in fact, would be when a man likens his wife or part of his wife to someone who is haram for him to marry forever, be it through blood relations or through in-law relations or through breastfeeding relations. So according to the definition, it does not literally have to be the back of his mother. It could be, let's say, if he likens his wife to the hand of his mother, or to the feet of his mother, or to the face of his mother, and so on. Any part of a woman haram for him to marry forever, from the nasab, sihr, or rada'ah. And also note that this part should be joined on to the main essence of the mother. It must not take the ruling of being something which is separated from the mother. So for example, if he likens his wife to the hair strand of his mother. Now the hair strand, and likewise the nail, or the tooth, or the saliva, or the soul, all of these are not given the ruling of being muttasil, joined on to the essence of the mother. They are given the ruling of munfasil, separated from the mother, and hence would not be dhihar. So to put it simply, likening his wife to the back of his mother is dhihar, and likening his wife to the nails of his mother is not dhihar. What is the ruling on al-dhihar? It is haram, as explained to us in Surah Al-Mujadilah. However, if he makes the dhihar, it is valid. It's a peculiar situation, haram but valid. You do not often see things like these. And if he makes the dhihar, he is not allowed to have any type of intimate relations with his wife until he offers the kafara, as explained in Surah Al-Mujadilah. A companion by the name of Aus ibn Samit radiallahu anh made dhihar on his wife Khuwaila bint Tha'laba radiallahu anha, and the ayat of Surah Al-Mujadilah was sent down. In the days of Jahiliyyah, the dhihar was treated as a divorce, but Islam came and prevented that ruling. So it is not a divorce, but nonetheless it is something haram for which a kafara must be offered. And the kafara to wipe away the sin is, as laid down in the Quran, to free a believing servant. And if he is unable to do so, to fast 2 consecutive months. And this is all before he has intercourse with his wife. And if he is unable to do that, then it is to feed 60 poor people. Is it possible for a man to make dhihar for a limited period? So he says to his wife, "You are like the back of my mother," for 1 month. Okay, we will go along with what he said. So that means he's not allowed to have intercourse with his wife, and even to have any foreplay with his wife for that 1 month. Then afterwards, it's back to normal again. However, if he wants to have intercourse before the month is out, then he has to offer the kafara. What about if he has intercourse without offering the kafara? Then in that case he has done wrong, and it is upon him to repent and to fulfill his kafara. And we also find authentically in the Sunan, Salama ibn Sakhar radiallahu anh made dhihar on his wife for the duration of Ramadan to protect himself from having intercourse with her. However, one night he gave in to his temptations and had intercourse with her, and the Prophet told him to offer the kafara. The last point to note here is that the dhihar is valid from anyone who can issue a divorce. So we're talking about a mukallaf mukhtar, which we have spoken about before. Also note that the kafara needs to be in that particular order. You must free a servant. If not, then fasting 2 months, and if not, then feeding 60 poor people. Note also that if the woman says to her husband, "You are like the back of my father," so we just go the other way around, then this is not seen as a zihar. Rather, it is seen as an oath for which she must offer a kafara if she is to have intercourse with him. Likewise, if the man says this to his servant woman, it is not seen as a zihar. So the zihar is only applicable when a man specifically says this to his wife. No other combination is accepted. Okay, now let us move to the chapter of al-li'an, which is invoking curses on each other. Strictly speaking, only one party is invoking the curses, but it is still called li'an, which is a case where you apply to both parties something which only really applies to one. So for example, you'll find the Arab saying al-qamarain, the two moons, referring to the sun and the moon, despite the fact that only one of them is actually the moon and not the other. And this happens when a man accuses his wife of fornication, which would be adultery in this case, and he has no witnesses to back this up. He can make li'an and be separated from her. And this first happened with a Sahabi called Hilal ibn Umayyah radiallahu anh, who accused his wife of committing adultery with a man called Sharik ibn Sahma radiallahu anh. And in Surah An-Nur, al-li'an is legislated as a permissible option, because a man will clearly find it extremely difficult to keep quiet when he knows his wife has committed adultery. But on the other hand, accusing his wife of adultery without witnesses is also a major offense. So what is the man to do? The Quran gives us the answer of al-li'an. Okay, so how is li'an made? We have the following steps. Number one, the qadi tells both of them to repent and not to go ahead with the li'an. If you're guilty, admit it so and take your punishment in this world. This is the best option for both of them in the grand scheme of things. However, if they persist, then the qadi begins with the husband, and the husband will say 4 times, "I stand witness by Allah," and he has to use exactly these words, that I am truthful in what I accuse my wife with from zina. Now it is vital here that he says, "I bear witness by Allah," so that he is taking a testimony and taking an oath. They both must be combined. And when he says my wife, he points to her, so that there is no doubt about whom he is speaking about. If the wife is not present, then he can name her, and that's not a problem. Then the qadi needs to give him a final warning before he utters the 5th sentence, and he needs to tell him to fear Allah, because when he utters this upcoming 5th sentence, it will make it binding, meaning the punishment on him, if he is wrong, will become binding. It will become wajib. So he gives him a final warning. But if the husband persists, then no problem. He would say, "And may the curse of Allah be upon me if I am lying." So he's actually sending a curse on his own self, on the condition that he is lying. And when he completes these 5 sentences, the had punishment of qadhf on him is warded off. The qadhf punishment is 80 lashes, and we have yet to speak about that. So as it stands, the wife is worthy of the punishment of adultery. However, she can ward off this punishment from her by uttering 4 times that I bear witness by Allah that he is lying, or she could say he has lied against me. So she says this 4 times. Then before she utters the 5th sentence, the qadi again must give her the final warning that if she utters the 5th sentence, it will become binding upon her. But if she insists to continue, then she is to say, "And may the anger of Allah be upon me if he is speaking the truth." And when she says this, the punishment is warded off her. And both of them are not punished in this world. But of course, one of them is definitely lying. And so this is why we have Yawm al-Qiyamah. When a person accuses another of fornication, then he is given a had punishment of 80 lashes for qadhf if the other person is a Muslim and is afif, known to be chaste, or at least not known to be sexually debauched. But if a person is known or strongly suspected to be sexually promiscuous, and you accuse that person of zina without evidence, then the had punishment is not given to you, rather a ta'zir punishment will be given to you, in accordance with the ijtihad of the Imam. For a li'an to take place, we need to have 3 components. The first component, husband and the wife, that's who it happens between. The second component, the husband accuses her of zina. And the third component, she belies him. Because if she acknowledges, then we would have to pass the judgment on her. Okay, here's a question. When the li'an takes place, what results from it? Let us make mention of 4 effects. Number 1, the had punishment is dropped from both parties, husband and the wife, as we've stated before. Number 2, they are parted forever and are never allowed to be married again. So she would become as if she were his sister, never ever allowed to be married to him. And despite that, she would still need to observe the hijab in front of him and be treated like a non-mahram woman. So note that this is not a divorce. It is an annulment in the strongest possible sense. And number 3, if she is pregnant and the man accuses her of being pregnant from the zina, then this child will not be attributed to the husband. So the child will not inherit from the husband and he will not inherit from him. The child will only be attributed to the mother. And fourthly, if the man has consummated marriage with the wife, then he is not allowed to take back the mahar just because they're being split up. And the reason is because if he's had intercourse with her, then the mahar becomes binding upon him. There is a weak hadith in the Sunan which says تجوز المرأة ثلاثة مواريث عتيقها ولقيطها وولدها الذي لعنت عليه. The woman is entitled to 3 types of inheritance: the person she has freed, and the child which she has found, abandoned, and her child upon which she had made li'an. Okay, let us take a few review questions. Question number 1. We said the talaq needs to be issued in the proper time period. Which 4 types of women are exempt from this proper time period? Question number 2. What are the 4 conditions of baynunatun sughra, the minor type of separation? And question number 3. What are the 4 conditions which would allow the qadi to force the man to either have intercourse with her or divorce her when he makes the ilah?